I found my credit card maxed out. $30,000 missing before my birthday. My dad snapped. The family needed it more. My mom laughed. You can celebrate alone. We had better plans. I replied calmly. Then don't ever call me again. That night, I quietly canceled the mortgage, the truck, and her loan in silence. I found my credit card maxed out. $30,000 missing before my birthday. My mom snapped. The family needed it more. My dad laughed. You can celebrate alone? We had better plans. I replied calmly. Then don't ever call me again. That night, I quietly canceled the mortgage, the truck, and his loan in silence. I stared at my credit card statement, my hands trembling slightly as my eyes scanned the absurd numbers printed in black and white. $29,847.16. Almost $30,000. Gone. Vanished. Stolen. My birthday was next week. I had planned to take a few days off work, maybe even fly somewhere warm for once. I hadn't had a real vacation in years. But now, my entire savings cushion was obliterated overnight. I immediately called the bank to dispute the charges, hoping it was some elaborate fraud, a hacker maybe. But as the man on the other end politely explained, the charges had been authorized by me, at least according to the signatures and PIN verification, except I hadn't bought anything. I paced the living room of my small apartment, my heart pounding with rage and confusion. And then it hit me. Only two people had access to my information, my parents. I grabbed my phone and dialed. My mother answered after 2 rings, her voice unusually casual. Hey, sweetheart, everything okay? I clenched my jaw. My credit card is maxed out, Mom. Almost $30,000. Do you know anything about that? There was a pause, a heavy, suffocating pause. Well, she finally said, her tone suddenly defensive. The family needed it more. You'll be fine. You're doing well enough, aren't you? You make good money. I could feel my blood boiling. You used my credit card? It's not like that, she snapped, her voice rising. You always act like your money is just yours. We're family. Sometimes sacrifices have to be made. Before I could respond, I heard my father's voice in the background. He laughed like it was all one big joke. And honestly, you don't need a fancy birthday trip. We had better plans for that money. You can celebrate alone this year. The world seemed to tilt sideways for a moment. My breath came in short, shallow bursts. I had worked 2 jobs through college, saved religiously, skipped nights out, vacations, new clothes, and now this. I swallowed the lump rising in my throat and forced my voice to remain calm. Then don't ever call me again. Before my mother could spit out another entitled excuse, I ended the call. I stood there in my kitchen for a long time, phone still warm in my hand, staring at the black screen like it might explain itself. My reflection in the darkened glass of the microwave door looked like a stranger, calm on the outside, hollowed out on the inside. I kept waiting for the tears to come, the way they always had before, but they never did. Instead, there was just a quiet, cold clarity settling over me, the kind that only arrives after you've been pushed past the last edge of patience you didn't even know you had left. That night, as the city lights blinked through my window, I sat at my laptop opening every account they never thought I'd touch. The joint mortgage I'd co-signed, canceled. The truck loan I co-guaranteed for my father, terminated. His personal line of credit tied to my name, erased. My fingers moved with a strange, mechanical precision, clicking through portals and hold music and customer service scripts I now knew by heart. I did it all in silence. No fights, no explanations, just cold, calculated clicks. Somewhere around 2 in the morning, I realized my hands had stopped shaking. It wasn't about revenge. It was finally about drawing a line I should have drawn years ago. They wanted to see what life without me looked like. They were about to find out. Not out of cruelty, but because enabling them had nearly broken me. You probably wonder how I even got here. How a grown woman with a stable career ended up being milked dry by her own family. It didn't happen overnight. That's the sick part. They were patient, strategic, the way a slow leak is more dangerous than a burst pipe, because you don't notice you're drowning until the water's already at your neck. From the moment I landed my first real job, entry-level finance, fresh out of college, my parents saw it as their victory, not mine. We sacrificed everything for you, my mother reminded me constantly, usually right before asking for something. You owe us. Without us, you wouldn't even have that degree, my father would chime in, conveniently forgetting the scholarships and the 2 jobs I'd worked to cover what they hadn't. All we're asking is a little help, you know, family helping family. At first, it was small things, the kind of requests that felt almost reasonable if you squinted. A few hundred here to help with the house taxes, a few thousand there to cover my brother's unexpected dental surgery. Dad's old truck broke down. Could I co-sign for a new one, just until he got back on his feet? Mom's credit card was maxed, just temporarily, of course. She'd pay me back the second her hours picked up at work. I told myself it was fine, temporary, a bridge and not a habit. They raised me, after all. It's what good daughters do, right? I used to repeat that sentence to myself like a prayer, especially on the nights I ate ramen for the 3rd time that week so I could cover whatever emergency had cropped up that month. But temporary became permanent, the way it always does once no one is made to answer for it. Before long, my mother outright expected me to cover their mortgage shortfalls, mentioning the due date the way other people mention the weather, as if it were simply a fact of life I was responsible for managing. My father stopped even pretending he'd pay me back. The promises just quietly disappeared from his vocabulary. My younger brother Mason, the golden child, quit his job entirely to find himself and pursue creative passions, whatever that meant that particular month, while I quietly picked up his student loan payments to keep his credit from imploding. You make 6 figures, my father once said, waving his hand like it was nothing, like the number itself absolved him of ever having to ask twice. We're not asking for much. 6 figures, yes, but after taxes, rent, and their endless emergencies, my bank account looked like it belonged to a fast food cashier, and I was too proud or too exhausted to correct anyone who assumed otherwise. I watched my friends buy homes, invest, travel to places I only saw in their photos. I stayed in my cramped apartment, eating takeout, and pretending I was building a future while draining myself for theirs. I told myself it was a phase, that eventually they'd stand on their own, and I'd finally get to start living for myself. I was wrong every single time. Then came the worst of it. 2 years ago, my father lost his job after being caught embezzling funds from his company, something I only learned about after I had already loaned him nearly $40,000 to bridge what he swore was a rough patch. It's just temporary, sweetheart, he promised back then, his voice thick with fake humility, his eyes not quite meeting mine. Once I'm back on my feet, I'll pay you back in full. He never got back on his feet. Instead, he and my mother doubled down on bleeding me dry, as if my silence in the face of one betrayal was permission for the next. My credit card slowly became their emergency fund, a resource they treated as communal property without ever once asking whether I agreed. They started using my name on loan applications without even telling me, forging signatures, sweet-talking bank managers, whispering, "Our daughter will cover it if anything goes wrong," like I was a line item in their budget instead of a person. And Mason, he played his role perfectly, the helpless prince who never had to grow up because someone else always caught him. New iPhones, luxury gadgets, startup coaching programs he abandoned within weeks, all charged to my accounts with fake smiles and empty promises. "I'll pay you back when my brand takes off. Just be patient, okay?" I was patient. I was patient for years. Every time I tried to set boundaries, I was met with their usual weapons, guilt and shame, wielded so skillfully I sometimes didn't recognize the wound until hours later. Do you want your father to lose the house? How can you be so selfish when your brother's mental health depends on this? After everything we've done for you, you've changed. Money has made you cold. That last one always stung the most, because for a long time I believed it. I thought maybe I really had become someone hard and ungrateful, instead of someone who was simply tired of being used. The breaking point came last month. I finally said no when my father asked me to cover a $15,000 business loan for Mason's girlfriend, some deadbeat who called herself an entrepreneur but couldn't hold a job longer than 3 months, and who I'd met exactly twice. My mother exploded, her voice hitting a register I'd never heard from her before. "You're ruining this family," she screamed across the dinner table, her fork clattering against her plate. "What kind of daughter are you?" My father started crying on cue, the same performance I'd watched a dozen times, tears that vanished the moment they'd served their purpose. Mason stormed upstairs, slamming doors like some wounded teenager, even though he was 26 years old and hadn't paid a bill in his life. I sat there, stone-faced, not a word, not anymore. Something inside me had gone quiet and still, the way the air goes still right before a storm. Because that night, after they went to bed, I checked my credit account and saw the $30,000 charge sitting there, waiting to swallow me whole. They hadn't even asked. They just helped themselves, like they always had, except this time I finally let myself see it for what it was. I knew the explosion was coming. I just didn't expect it to come this fast or this ugly. The morning after I canceled everything, my phone started vibrating nonstop, buzzing against my nightstand until I finally silenced it just to hear myself think. 27 missed calls, 15 voicemails, and the texts, hundreds of them, arriving in furious bursts. Some pleading, some cursing, some pure, venomous rage. I read the first few and then stopped, setting the phone face down and going about my morning like it was any other day, which felt strange and freeing in a way I hadn't expected. By noon, they were waiting for me. When I pulled into the parking lot after work, my parents and Mason were standing by the entrance to my building like a pack of wolves that had finally cornered something. My mother's face was already purple with fury, my father's cheeks streaked with crocodile tears. Mason had his arms crossed, radiating pure entitlement, like he was the one who'd been wronged. I barely had time to close my car door before my mother stormed over, finger jabbing the air like a weapon aimed straight at my chest. "What did you do?" she bellowed, spit flying. "You destroyed us, you selfish fool." I didn't flinch. Not this time. I protected myself, I said coldly, my voice steadier than I felt. "Something none of you ever bothered to do for me." "The bank called this morning," she shouted, her whole body shaking. "The mortgage is frozen. The truck's been repossessed. Your father's credit cards are locked. What gives you the right?" "The right?" I sneered, and for the first time in my life, I didn't feel a single flicker of guilt saying it. "You stole from me, forged my name on loans, maxed out my credit cards. I spent years covering for your mistakes. Now you can deal with the consequences." "We're family!" my father shrieked, stepping forward like proximity alone might change my mind. "How can you do this to your own parents?" His voice cracked like glass, but his eyes were still cold and manipulative, the same eyes that had guilt-tripped me my entire life, calculating even now, watching to see if the performance was working. "Family doesn't steal," I snapped. "Family doesn't lie. Family doesn't use me like an ATM machine." Mason finally jumped in, his voice dripping with condescension. "Oh, please," he scoffed. "You're being so dramatic. You make good money. You weren't even using most of that credit. We just needed a little help." $30,000 isn't a little help. Help, I roared, my voice echoing off the building. You drained my savings. You destroyed my credit. You took my future and handed it to yourselves like I owed you my entire life. I wasn't angry. I was exhausted, and I finally said it out loud. Mason rolled his eyes like a spoiled teenager denied a toy. God, you act like you're some saint. You wouldn't even have that job if Mom hadn't pushed you. We gave you everything. No, I growled. You took everything and I let you, but not anymore. My mother took a step closer, her face inches from mine now, her voice dropping into a low, dangerous growl. You think you're better than us now? You think you're too good for your family? You're nothing without us. You'll regret this. No, I said calmly. The only thing I regret is not cutting you off sooner. Her face contorted, veins bulging at her temples. You owe us. We gave you life and you spent it like it was your bank account. I shot back. I worked 2 jobs through college while Mason took joyrides. I lived in a shoebox while you bought Dad his 3rd truck. Every time I got ahead, you found new ways to pull me back down. Enough. My father's voice was suddenly shrill, hysterical. Where are your parents? You're supposed to take care of us. I'm not your retirement plan, I said, my voice cold as steel. I'm not your bailout. I'm not your slave. The neighbors were starting to gather now, heads peeking from windows, doors slightly ajar, curious faces watching the family meltdown unfold in broad daylight. And then, like clockwork, came the final act, the manipulation. My father fell to his knees on the concrete, sobbing loudly for maximum performance. Please, he wailed. If you walk away, we'll lose everything. The house, my health, Mason will be homeless. Then maybe Mason should get a job, I said bluntly. Maybe you should stop living beyond your means. And maybe Mom should finally take responsibility for the mess she created. You heartless monster, Mason screamed. You're our family. We need you. I shook my head, looking at them, really looking for the first time. No, you don't need me. You need my money. You need my credit. You need someone to clean up after your endless failures. But you never needed me. You never even saw me as a person, only as a wallet. My mother lunged forward, her voice cracking under the weight of her fury. We made you. No, I said softly. You broke me. But I finally put myself back together, without you. And then I delivered the final blow. Don't ever call me again. Don't knock on my door. Don't text me. Don't pretend we're family. Because as far as I'm concerned, you never were. The silence after those words was deafening. For a moment, all 3 of them just stood there, blinking, like I'd spoken in a foreign language they couldn't comprehend. And then I turned, walked past them, and entered my building, leaving them standing in the parking lot, humiliated, powerless, and finally cut off. If you ask me today what I regret, I'll tell you the same thing every time. Not that I walked away, but that I didn't do it sooner, because the moment I chose myself, I won.